Hello everyone, welcome to the third season of Design Inspire Talks. I'm Kadambari Sahu, your host, founder of Design Inspire platform and SVP Design at ValueLabs. Design Inspire is an initiative to connect designers across the global design community, and Design Inspire Talks is a presentation and discussion series with passionate, innovative, and inspiring designers. It dives deep into their passion, inspiration, and what makes them go. It is an effort to understand how they are navigating their career path and how they are investing their creative energies. We believe hearing their bold moves and inspiring stories will ignite interest and inspire the next generation of budding designers across the globe. So let's go forward with our guest today, Benedetto Bordone, founder of the Loft. Benedetto is an agency owner, creative entrepreneur, and founder of The Loft, a true multidisciplinarian. His journey started as a young car designer, where after graduating with a Master's of Design, he worked for studios such as Alfa Romeo, Honda, and the legendary style Bertone. An interest in all types of design led Benedetto to return to night school to learn website graphic design. He spent several years freelancing, where he became more and more interested in business and particularly entrepreneurship. He started his own agency 10 years ago and has used a dynamic, fast moving, and entrepreneurial approach to lead countless teams to deliver thousands of high quality creative projects for hundreds of different clients over the past decade. His entrepreneurial approach has helped him to grow his agency rapidly while producing outstanding results in terms of creative thinking, design quality, and client satisfaction. He has learned many things about the business, growth, and the development of people. So we have Benedetto with us today. Hello, Benedetto. How are you doing today?
Hello, Kadambari. Very well, thank you. Very well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So, Benedetto, our the talk series is divided into two parts. The first part would be presentation and anything that inspires you, your design journey, or anything that you'd like to share with us today. And the second part would be more sort of question answer where we discuss about your journey. So let's go forward. We're excited to see your presentation.
Excellent, thank you. And just a few words just to say thank you very much, Kadambari, for allowing me to be part of the Design Inspire platform. I know it has a truly global reach, so I am humbled and honored to be a part of your community now. And thank you so much from the entire creative community for what you guys are doing. It's a wonderful thing. We need as much of it as possible, people sharing ideas. So thank you for that. In terms of what we'll talk about today, it's the approach we've used at the Loft called an entrepreneurial approach. It's mainly about being able to achieve really exceptional results, exceptional outcomes in very short periods of time. And some of the principles and some of the working practices that we've used for many years to do this. We'll keep our presentation quite short. It's a presentation, but it's very collaborative. Please feel free to interrupt me or ask any questions as I'm speaking. Hopefully I won't talk too much. I'll start by saying it's very quite light, mainly because as I mentioned, one of the things is very important for when dealing with commercial environment, entrepreneurship, working with entrepreneurs, working with people people in leadership positions. It's very much to respect the time of the people you're working with. It's a big part of the presentation and the way we work and what we're going to speak about today. So I'll put the presentation up and we'll get going. Okay, as mentioned, an entrepreneurial approach it's principally about using the whole thing about an entrepreneur is they create value. So sometimes, like a magician, sometimes they create something out of nothing. They're able to create, to create some ingredients and then create a drink or create an item of food, or take some materials and create an item of clothing, and then always able to create a value. And this value allows business to function. It allows people to be employed. It allows the creation of a more developed and a more developed society. So this idea of the entrepreneur is very interesting. And when it works alongside the discipline of design, you can really have some very interesting results. So what I'm going to speak about today is some of the things we've done in the past and how we've been able to do them. So just initially, I'm going to go very, very briefly go through some of the work that we've done over the years. The work spans everything from graphic design, infographics, websites. Our company creates brands, and we create high impact ideas that really propel brands forward. But at all the time, it's about creating value for the people, the organizations, the businesses that we work with. So, we've done things like this in the past. It was a hero image for our I say website, but these things become more than websites. They become, your social media communications. They become, graphically, you can use these things in lots of different ways. It was something that we did. It's sort of Dan Pink inspired illustration stroke art directed photography to get across the culture in our organization. So you can see us all drawing on the screen, things about, the importance of ideas, little bits about the personality of the people in the organization, etc., etc. So we've done things like this, high impact infographics, taking sometimes very scientific data. This one was with regards to CO2 emissions for a leather company, taking sometimes information is very dry, sometimes maybe a little bit analytical, a little bit technical, and trying to bring it to life in a really incredibly bold and impactful way. Taking entrepreneurs that are developing, developing their own soft drinks, like this particular brand, Drink Biotic, looking to create something that's just going to absolutely jump off the shelf and dominate the shelf in a certain way. Again, more high impact infographics. Infographics are a little bit of a house speciality for us. We take lots of information and try and find some sort of very, very bold way to bring it to life, usually to communicate one message. And we'll talk a little bit about why that's particularly important. All of these different, and there's, as mentioned by Kadambari in the introduction, there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of these examples that we've worked on over the years with the team. So that's the design itself. Apologies, one further example. Again, this one has quite a lot of significance, which we may get to a little bit later, but this idea of explainer graphics, very, very important to describe what something does. But as I was about to say, very, very important in terms of design quality, but even more important is how this type of approach is able to create not just good client experience, but wonderful client experience, outstanding client experience. There's nothing better than working with people when everybody's loving the project, loving the process, the client and the team, the creative team working in perfect harmony. As we did in this project, this is in the very, very early days of our agency. This image is nearly 10 years old. You can tell, I think it was taken with a BlackBerry, which shows how old it was, at the end of one of our first sort of big brand identity projects called Bridge to Business. The client's the slightly older gentleman in the middle, and you can see we're all holding Prosecco. He brought us alcohol for what was a very happy client after a very happy result. This project, like many of our projects, was done in super quick time. It was truly collaborative, and I'll get into a little bit later. But this approach essentially allows us to create exceptional outcomes in terms of design quality, creative thinking, and also client experience. The benefits, and I presume that the majority of the people that will be watching this talk are young designers or young creatives, possibly not, maybe some slightly people with a little bit more experience. But when we talk about an entrepreneurial approach, the benefits for those people are several-fold. Essentially, if you're getting more done in less time, you're obviously working more efficiently. The days tend to be more exciting because you may work on 3 or 4 different things every day on shorter periods of time. We tend to always work in short bursts, which tends to be a little bit more exciting. You will have space for a greater variety of creative challenge, more rounded portfolios, just a greater variety of work. Again, with the time saved, there's the opportunity to learn a little bit more about design and wider business, how all the different parts, whether it's account management, development, production, depending on the different type of design space you're working, how all these elements fit together. which allows you to deliver more value, whether it's to the client or to your manager. And essentially, the most important thing about this, and Kadambari, you're a great example of this, is if you get things done quicker, if you are able to achieve a better quality of results or better quality of outcome in a shorter period of time, you have a much better chance of becoming, taking leadership opportunities within a studio or within an agency. And if you take on the next phase, the opportunity to partner with other organizations, most of our larger clients, we were eventually partners with them. We were part of their growth as we worked with them for 3, 4, 5 years. And that's incredibly gratifying, because there's nothing better for a young creative, for their ideas to be heard, for their ideas to be created in real life. It's a wonderful experience. It's a wonderful moment when the client begins to trust you more and more. Sometimes it takes some time, but again, if you're able to achieve what they're looking for, make them delighted, and do it in double quick time, the opportunities for leadership and partnership are there. The first thing I'm going to talk about, so how does an entrepreneurial approach actually work? So the first thing is mainly, and again, we spoke about this before, and is just stepping into the future and really understanding what the client wants, not what the client needs, what the client wants, what's going to get the client excited, or I say the manager that represents the client. What are the little details? It's taking some of what ValueLabs does very well, this idea of user experience, and considering a wonderful experience. Sometimes we say in the studio, think of happy faces, think of happy people, and then let's work backwards from there. And the reason for that is, if you have great ideas, if you have exciting ideas that will work in practice, that will work in reality, you will have a really happy client. But more than that, the process becomes so much quicker. It becomes so much more frictionless. It becomes so much easier, because everybody's excited to see the realization of a great idea, of something that's going to get people excited. So the example I selected was the one that I showed just a few slides back about Bridge to Business, which was a brand that was created many years back. It was created for an organization that was going to go into colleges, and they wanted to inspire decision makers, but particularly students, to consider enterprise, to consider business as something that they would do. And generally, there's always a brief in terms of, we'd like it must function in such a way, it must be able to be used on the website, it must have certain fonts, it must be, there's all these different parameters that every designer will have as part of their design brief. But we digged a little bit, we went a little bit further. We wanted to truly understand, well, how is this brand, how can this brand be more special for the client? And the chief executive, again, the gentleman that was seen in the picture earlier, he's a storyteller, and part of his job is to tell stories, whether it's to government. He does a lot of work trying to persuade government to give them more funds, to give them more money. He does a lot of conferences. He has to explain the story about this brand several times a week. So again, we created a lovely brand. The brand is cool. It's exciting. Even though it's quite old now, it still looks great. But more importantly, we created this story of celestial navigation, of star constellations. We looked at various star constellations and eventually found the star constellation for Lady Luck, which is something the organization itself was wanting to inspire college students to consider entrepreneurship. And we liked Lady Luck mainly because it's something every entrepreneur, or everybody that has a business, or everybody that's even if you're not an entrepreneur, somebody that's endeavoring to do something challenging or exciting, sometimes you'll need a little bit of luck. So this particular image was wonderful. It allowed him to tell the story repeatedly for many, many years about the brand. It gave every single opportunity when the logo was shown, it gave him the chance to explain what the brand was about. What are these crazy shards, colored shards? What do they mean, etc. In fact, it was launched in the Science Centre in Glasgow, in the planetarium. So we actually had the press, the national press, and all the different people in government in this planetarium, where they're all looking at the stars, and they brought up the star in Ashira for Lady Luck, and he was able to introduce the brand. So much more effective. It wasn't part of the brief, it wasn't part of the requirements, but it was just that little bit of additional, really caring, really, let's, instead of doing something good, let's do something fantastic, let's do something brilliant. There's a different energy with those words. There's a different commitment when you start there. And like I said, this project ran very, very quickly. It was done well ahead of time. It was done well ahead of budget. Really, really effective. So one of the things we would definitely say is really step into the future. Imagine delighted people and as part of the experience, and then let's work the way backwards from there. It creates a different type of energy for the project itself. And it doesn't necessarily need to be for brands. It can be for, you can consider websites. It could be a bit of information on an infographic. There's lots and lots of different ways that this principle could be used in practice. So the second thing, and the reason I put this up is, I think a lot of design students, I also think people within design studios and agencies, sometimes it's a part of the process that I think is really, really important, but sometimes it's forgotten. It's just this initial ideation. As mentioned at the beginning, we work in very, very short sprints. We work very, very quick. We put ideas down quickly. We put them on the wall. This is really, really important because it keeps everything light. It keeps everything commitment free. It allows creative people to express what it is that they want to do. This type of presentation, this type of creating ideas, is the reason I included it is because I don't think many studios or agencies do this anymore. And what we found is it's invaluable. So we did several years ago, we did a survey with all our clients, and we're asking what were the parts of the Loft experience that they appreciated the most. And funnily enough, and this was an accident, we never planned to have every single project on a wall. It was just something we did. And it kind of started to make sense, but they love this idea of everything being on the wall. I'm going to get a little bit into presentations later. So it was very, very effective this way. Just put an idea down. Doesn't matter if it's a post-it note, doesn't matter if it's a printout, doesn't matter if it's something cut out of a magazine. It's just important to get the ideas down and get them down in the most sort of commitment-free, quick way possible. Again, it's brilliant for building momentum, creating a fast energy with the project. I included this example, which has nothing to do with the Loft, but while putting all these great ideas down, we love the idea of thinking about the unthinkable. Now, some people may know this, some people may not know this example. I don't even know if it's a true story, but I quite like it because I think it's quite funny that during the space race many years ago, that the Americans in NASA had spent millions and millions of dollars trying to develop a pen that could write in space, the famous zero gravity pen. And all this time and energy to create something which was obviously going to do a very difficult task, a very incredibly challenging task. And then the idea, the flip side of that, the Russians just used a pencil, which worked just as effectively well. So that type of thinking should always be present at the beginning. Can we achieve the solution or the outcome in a much easier way? Is there something there that we can do that would work straight away? Because again, we're trying to get results. We're trying to get outstanding results very, very quickly. So I think this should form part of that initial research, that initial thinking. I think that is very entrepreneurial to think of something which is just so out there but might actually work. But going back to this type of presentation, one of the beautiful things about this and about efficient working is this can become your presentation. This one's probably a little bit too messy, but over the years, I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of times, our presentations went from, when I started out, it was always very formal. We would have a slide deck. We would have, we'd bring the client into a fancy room. We'd present it in a very formal way. Everybody was kind of nervous and a little bit There's lots of preparation. The presentation itself would take half a day or 2 days to prepare. And just after a while, we just started working much faster, and we started working with clients at very, very tight deadlines. So this became the presentation, you know, the wall presentation. The research would become the presentation itself. And we would take the client through. I always say this, we would always factor out what we think were the best solutions. We would always have a few different ideas on there that were a little bit more developed than others. But this idea of using the research or using your initial sketches, it's wonderful. It allows you to get the presentation quicker. And again, speed is very, very important. If you're 1 step or 2 or 3 steps ahead of the client in terms of their timeline, you're beginning to surpass expectation, and they want to be involved at this stage. It allows you to very, very quickly get a feel for what it is they're looking to do. So this idea of the wall presentation, or the using your research as part of your presentation, yeah, like I said, for many, many years, we would just we'd all be standing up, we'd have coffee, the different people in the design team would present. It was one of the things I said that the Loft experience that everybody liked very, very much. We were kind of surprised by that. We thought they'd maybe prefer to be treated, you know, the fancy coffee, the nice room, you know, all that sort of stuff. But turns out they actually like to stand, have a coffee, talk about their work for 20, 30 minutes, and then, you know, get about their day. And again, it goes back to this basic principle of what I was saying about respecting other people's time, which is very, very important, especially the higher up in an organization that you go. We would have presentations like this with CEOs of very, very large companies. And you're always a bit nervous doing it, because you kind of half expect that they're going to want to see mock-ups, or they're going to want to see something much, much more developed, because, oh, it's the CEO of a company that's got 5,000 employees or something like that. It turns out I can't remember one time when this type of presentation was ever didn't go down well, because it's really about the quality of the thoughts, the quality of the ideas, the quality of the person's ability, the creative person's ability. So we want to get to that as quickly as possible. Once you have a direction, once the direction has been established, and this is really important, working out what the client not just wants but really wants, you know, going that little bit further, we hone down very, very quickly. We focus incredibly quickly into what is the solution. Then is the time to really go crazy with mock-ups and final designs. We've had identities. Our studio would tend to produce many, many more iterations of a design than expected. So to give just an example, there was a time a few years ago, I remember a pitch for a campaign with it was actually a government organization, and it was really, really funny. There was about 4 or 5 different agencies involved in it, and I always remember we'd 5 really, this isn't this particular project, but we'd I think 4 or 5 really outstanding concepts, and each of the other agencies had presented one concept. So the conversation kind of shifted after everybody presented to which one of the Loft proposals we would go with, as opposed to which agency are we going to go with. So as long as the work is good, as long as the quality of the thinking is good, I think it's good to present as many options as possible. And whatever doesn't get used can be reused sometimes at a later date. This particular example is something we did for an engineering client, or engineering digital software client based in Edinburgh. Incredible client, incredible company. First time they'd ever worked with an agency. They were looking for a print ad to showcase what their digital oil field did, and it took a lot of time, but eventually we had I say a lot of time, a lot of energy. It was as usual. We worked quite fast in the studio, but pretty intense days. I remember those 2 or 3 days of just intense sketching, because it was very, very complex software. There was so many particular messages and benefits and ideas communicated with this particular type of software. So there was a lot of what we call intellectual weightlifting that had to be done before we could arrive at these solutions. But once we were able to get a clearer idea of what it was they were looking for, we had 6 concepts, and I think all 6 of them are outstanding in their own ways. And again, this is one of the sheets, one of the mock-ups. I think that best represents the energy and the idea of an entrepreneurial approach within our agency. So again, you know, you go through the different, you present the different variations. The client eventually selects one thing that they like. Then is the time to really, the obsession part, the obsession with the finish, the obsession with that last 1 or 2% that can make all the difference. At the Loft, we are obsessed about that last 1, 2, 3%. You know, is one extra person going to click the, you know, go to the contact form of a website? Is that business card going to make one more person, you know, with the phone the organization that's got the business card? All of these different things, because you've been through this creative process. It's then really about, like I said, obsessional, and that obsession part, it, you know, it could be about the quality of the finish of a print. It could be about, you know, does the website work? Does the imagery on the website work on every single device, you know, perfectly? Does, you know, do we have that level of perfection, that level of quality and finish? That's really where the value is. If you look at the finest clothing, the finest food, there's sometimes only a tiny little difference between the, you know, the mainstream brands that are with the mainstream products and the premium brands with the premium products. Sometimes it's just 2 or 3 details, but they've done it very, very well. So we take this part very, very seriously. This particular example is for a business card. We lovingly called these at the time, you know, the most beautiful business cards in the world. A bit of an outrageous statement, but again, client, it wasn't just that they liked it, they absolutely loved it. What was great about this particular client was it was a car franchise that also sold Rolls-Royce and Aston Martin. And they had the company founder had an Aston Martin branded business card and a Rolls-Royce branded business card, but he always used the ones that we had designed for him for the leaving car company, which gave us no end of pleasure and joy, which was really fantastic. But yeah, just once you've committed, there's the extra mile really does make an incredible difference. And when you compound that over a career, over 2 or 3 years of doing that time after time after time, you will see exceptional results in terms of your career and your progression. So this part of it is, you know, once you've made the commitment to do it as really as well as you can. And just on a more practical note, just one final thing. That also includes if you're working on brochures and websites. Again, different companies, larger companies, this particular responsibility won't fall so much on the creative. But I think everybody should take responsibility. Is the copy correct? Has it been spell checked? Are there spelling? There is nothing that will kill the quality of a presentation of anything like a bad, you know, with something that hasn't been spelled correctly. It seems like such a simple thing to say. But again, thinking of the audience, we get CVs in that have spelling mistakes. I hate to say it, it's maybe fair, not fair, I don't know, but the first thing you'll see is the spelling mistake on the CV or the cover letter. So it does affect that initial reaction, that initial impulse of a person's abilities. So little things like that. If it's a collaboration, it's important everybody takes responsibility for those things. And there's 100 other things you could talk about. Poor line spacing on a brochure. You could talk about a mobile page that doesn't work responsively as well as it could. Again, touching on all the different roles. Just making sure this little bit of extra time and commitment to quality has an exponential difference for the end result and eventually the career of the person that would use these, that takes the time to do it. So hopefully we go through a process, we've saved time. The project is great, everybody's happy. Again, when everybody's really delighted with the final solution, it's such an effortless process. And I can say that very, very genuinely. It's like skiing downhill at a nice pace. Everything goes in your direction very, very nicely. You should have some extra time. So you have the extra time to deliver something of extra value, either to the client, or you can have some time to work on your own skills or do some new challenges. Just a couple of examples here. Some things we did. This was an infographic we did. We had some extra time. We showed that particular client, this is what it could look like if this particular client had the Glasgow City Marketing Bureau had offices, and where they did lots of very formal presentations. They would bring people in from other cities around the world. This was the infographic. We showed them this is potentially what this could look like if you took the infographic and did the presented on the wall. A little image of this takes 10-15 minutes to prepare, but it's just that giving extra value to the client with the time you've saved. Again, going back to petroleum experts, which I'll just to give a quick recap, which was this particular client, I can say they went with the image, the one on the bottom row, the one in the middle. Again, we can bring that image up. That was the particular graphic they went with. So we created an advert for an entire advertisement for that. And again, we had some time in the studio, so we sketched out what this could particularly look like as a 3D display. Again, this is sort of super impactful, taking people through the 5 layers of the software. That would be a trade show exhibition with a difference. A little sketch, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, but very much appreciated by the client, delivering extra value. Wonderful for the overall process, if you like. So that's a little bit, that presentation is geared mainly towards graphic websites, designers, etc. Mainly graphic designers, I would say, but hopefully there's a little bit in there for everybody. We very much, as mentioned before, I'm a multidisciplinarian. I've worked in car design. I've worked in lots and lots of different types of design and branding and business, lots of different challenges. It makes for a very, very fun and exciting life, an exciting way of working. So, yep, that's our presentation for the Loft and entrepreneurial approach. And now I'm going to get hopefully some questions by Kadambari. So I'm going to stop the share.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really interesting, Benedetto. And what I really liked about the whole presentation was, the things that you talked about. Some of the things I'm just going to relay back to you, maybe some appreciating points there. How you talked about, doing things fast. And I always believe, like, doing rapid prototyping before you arrive at the solution. I think fail fast should be good. Without building everything, creating everything concrete. It is good to just, be very rough, explore more. That way it is, a lot of creativity, your wall presentations. I think, digital presentations are good, but, there's always like so much happiness when you put it on the space, not only for the team to, look all of the different sort of things and connect that internet connectedness that happens in the brain, which gives so many different ideas. And walking through the space and doing it that way, it keeps like so informal, but at the same point of time so effective. So I can't agree more there. You talked about the intellectual weightlifting required for the tech, specifically very technical or very tech driven spaces or products that you work for. Can't agree more there as well. That how it is so difficult for us to understand, and the quality of converting something so complex to so simple. I think that's one place we designers come in very well. So yeah, I think you guys did a commendable job looking at how simplistically you were able to sort of define that. And the last part, as you said, the last 1 or 2% is actually in the details. As they always say, God lies in details. And my brother used to say, when you're 99% done, you're halfway through, which I always remember. He used to tell me, when you're 99% done, you're halfway through. So yeah, and the last but not the least, the multidisciplinarity. I think I absolutely sort of think that's something to value all the time. Like I value all the time, and so does the team. I think there's something so fun about tapping into different media, different domains, different discipline. I think it keeps you fresh, right, Benedetto?
Yeah, completely. Because what you find is that the skills and the experiences and the learnings from different disciplines, from different challenges, just makes you richer as a designer. It creates a more rounded designer. It creates a better leader. Makes you more interesting. After a while, the certain things, it's good to have a process and to have a standard way of working. as a kind of safety net.
Yeah.
You know, where okay, we're going to be under a little bit of tight time pressure here, so I'm going to do it the way I always did it. I think that's okay. But I think as much as possible, and particularly at college or at the earlier stage of the career, just try to explore as much as possible, have as much fun, and you use the words that I love: take risks, take creative risks. I bit off the point, but I think take risks in life also. You know, I think we're becoming. I think there's a bit of a, everybody wants to be intellectual, everybody wants to be clever, and I think that's okay. But there's, you know, I think we should take risks. Let's just leave it there. I think it's very important for and you feel good about yourself as well.
Can't agree more there. Like, with you, talking about taking risks. Also, what you brought about as a very interesting point, that, don't limit yourself, try more. And I think, more and more, I think one of the problems that is happening in our industry is the templatization. People have like a process template and people just, sort of go about it that way. I think not getting templatized is also a great way. I think always looking at the process to reinvent, something new, not starting from the scratch maybe, but if you have process, how can you better it? That's a really good point that you brought in. Not staying limited and exploring more.
No, of course. I mean, we look at it in the most holistic way possible. It's a question and an answer. So we got to understand the question, and then we got to design an answer. And that's kind of the process. Now, of course, you could have brief research, ideation, concepts, development, presentation one, presentation. I think that's okay. But I think essentially at the end of the day, it is question and answer. And it's why I was trying to think of an example ourselves, but I couldn't. With the time I had, I couldn't think of something where we've just shortcutted. We've hacked an idea which we've done in about 10 minutes, and it's like, oh wow, that works fantastically well. This kind of idea. I was talking about the Russians using the pencil. I don't actually know if this story is true. So I was reading that it's maybe just an old tale, but I'd like to think that it is quite true, because I love this idea of hundreds and thousands of people working to create this pen to work in space, and then the other guys just saying, why don't we use a pencil? Yeah.
It's great that you say that, and this was also part of one of our Bollywood movies here, or Indian cinema as respectfully should be called. In one of the Three Idiots, I think there was that was the name of the movie, and in that there's one person who in the last part of the movie, there's this professor who has this pen, zero gravity pen, and finally he gives out to the student, the notorious student, and the student says that why were they so idiot to sort of create this pen? But at the same point of time, the professor says, you are idiot, because what if the lead would have broken and it would have gone in that zero gravity into the ice? Did you think about that? I was like, okay, maybe. So I don't know, even I don't know the real story, but that was the part of the movie that we had.
I didn't know that.
So I'm going to ask you like some of the questions. Like it's amazing that how you went from car designer and the multidisciplinarity in your life went on from different stages you have went through. I wanted to understand, was design your first choice of career when you were young, or when did you come to know about design as such?
I remember it was probably, I have, in around about April 1994, which is quite a long time ago. I think I was 11 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting the newspaper. We still had the newspaper. I don't think people get newspapers so much anymore, but we got the newspaper coming in, and you flick through the newspaper, and there was a big section.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have this newspaper article in my old parents' house, where it had the Fiat Coupe,
Mm-hmm.
which was this new sports car by Fiat, the automotive company. And I remember it called Coupe de Grace, and it was stand by for a real space invader from Fiat.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that to see this car compared to all the other cars at the time, I remember the Calibra, the Rover 200 Coupe, it was just like, my jaw hit the floor. And I was just like, and at that moment I fell in love with mainly cars, but design as a whole, the whole idea of creating, of engineering beauty, of engineering something that just makes people go, like wow into the creating these little moments of joy. And I was a young boy at the time, so that's when design chose me, I think. And then afterwards, 5 or 6 years later, I was studying car design at the university in Coventry. So it chose me. I loved it. But it was interesting how the career kind of came, because I studied car design. What I didn't say, and what's not talked about in the intro so much, is I worked in all these studios, but it turned out I wasn't a very good car designer. I wasn't a very good practitioner. I'm not a good practitioner. I kind of have a laugh with the client sometimes to say, "Oh, you don't want me to design your thing." There's many more talented people, but I think I'm okay at leading a group of people to do the design. I think that's, yeah, I don't have patience. I'm quite, maybe a little bit like you. I like things, very, very fast. And I think sometimes design requires a little bit of patience.
That's great. I think your memory is quite accurate, must say. Like people generally say, but you went like directly April 1994. It was that newspaper, and you have it on your wall. Wow. I think that's quite. I think it's love at first sight, if I may say so. Uh, so yeah.
It really was, yeah.
Yeah, I think some of the designs can fall make you fall in love. I think the designers, I think there's a great responsibility as to what your design see, how you can shape careers by your own design of young people, falling in love with those sort of things. So yeah, I think in that case, then it was, I would say it wasn't an accident, right? It was like then you chose to do car design, and then you went for these different studios, and then eventually you went on to become the leader and looked at different processes to work through. I would like to now know like some of the things like how did you like find this whole this entrepreneurial approach? Was it like through trying, testing, and yeah, how did you went about like articulating this approach?
It kind of came out of necessity, because our company began growing very, very quickly. So, you'd go from, we started off just after a year, just myself. We had, we hired our first people, some of the people in the picture earlier. So you had a small team, and then, you go from one deadline every 2 or 3 days to 2 deadlines a day, and big deadlines. And if you're as kind of crazy as I am, and I'm quite crazy, and I push the limits is a big thing for me. I pushed also my own limits, because if you know your limits is good. You want to always know that you've delivered the maximum that you can do. It just became a necessity. It's not really, you work out which parts have the most value, which of the process. So having the rapid ideas at the beginning is very important, because it gives momentum for the process, for the project, for the client. But also putting time at the end of the process for this, where you're thinking slow. It's much more deliberate. It's much more perfectionist. These parts of the process are really, really important. Sometimes it's something in the middle. It's important to be playful, etc. But it really came as a consequence of having, oh my God, we got 4 or 5 deadlines in the next 2 days, and we're short of time, because again, I would push the limits. So you realize, okay, well, this client wants to see this. We deliver this, and then everything becomes much more incremental. But you realize the importance of what I said at the beginning, of having, right at the beginning, of thinking about what they really want. So the most important meeting is when you meet the client, or if you're a young designer and you're listening to your lecturer, or you're listening to your boss, or the person that's managing your studio, and really get into because essentially we're serving people. We're always serving other human beings. We're not serving organizations. We're serving other people. So it starts with a human being. What's going to make that person delighted? And if you start there, what's going to make that person make me feel the way I felt when I seen that Fiat Coupe? Like, oh my God, that's. And then it's so clever. I could, because you'll be aware that if the project goes bad, you end up in a situation where the client begins to try and design for you. They'll be like, can you try this? Can you try that? But if you create something so outrageously good, or an idea that's so outrageously good at the beginning, suddenly you have a much more harmonious